Hi everyone, welcome to week 2 of Stone Soup Troop. My name is Alyssa Vigneault and I am the president and founder of Rising Light Relief, which is a nonprofit based in Western North Carolina and is the sponsoring organization for the Stone Soup Troop program. I'm going to be cooking the shepherd's pie this week. It is my go-to recipe. When a girlfriend needs that comfort food, when there's a family who's food insecure, this is a super easy, super cheap meal to prepare. I will be preparing it on my own today and kind of filming as we go, so I'll cut in and out with the instructions. If you hear little taps on the wood floor, I do have 2 of my dogs in here with me right now. We are trying to stay warm on a very, very cold and snowy November day. So let's get started. Okay, so I have all of my ingredients laid out except for the milk. I'm gonna leave that in the fridge because we won't use it for a little while. And I have a pot of water set to boil that I'm gonna put my potatoes in. I am going to start peeling the potatoes here momentarily, but I'm going to start browning off my ground beef first. We are gonna brown off the ground beef because that is gonna be the meat that has the fat this week. We're supplementing with turkey because it's a little cheaper, and that turkey will take on some of the fat and thus the moisture of the ground beef. So go ahead and get that started. I have 1 large skillet I'm just gonna do a couple batches in. And I did buy the giant 5-pound log of ground beef, which I'm going to use a sharp knife and split right through the plastic. I also have 2 different cutting boards laid out, one that I'll use for my raw meat and one that I will use for my vegetables. We don't want to overcrowd the pan, so I'm really only doing about 1/3 of the ground beef in a large skillet. Now I have a kind of hard spatula here. I'm just gonna press that down evenly in the pan. And I'm gonna go ahead and season this with just a little bit of salt and pepper. I am not going to season it with anything else right now, garlic or anything like that, because we will pour off some of this oil. Just a smidgen of salt and pepper. And we're gonna start browning this over medium heat while we start peeling the potatoes. So I have my potatoes all peeled, and we are gonna go ahead and start rough chopping those. Similar to how we did last week with the soup, I love to take the rounded end off my potatoes so I have a nice flat surface, and then I put that flat surface down on the cutting board and cut to equal sized slices. It doesn't have to be as precise as we were doing for the soup, but again, we don't want huge pieces and then really thin chunks where when we boil this for the mashed potatoes, we're gonna end up with some of them just dissolving into the water. Sorry for my little dog down there trying to catch any potato scraps. And my water has just about come to a boil, so by the time we get these potatoes chopped, we should be ready to throw them in the water to get our potatoes boiling for mashed potatoes. And it looks like I've got another 2 minutes before I'm gonna go ahead, stir that ground beef one more time, make sure we've gotten all parts cooked off, and then we'll strain the grease off. We are gonna strain that grease into a bowl and hold onto it for later. So while I am cutting my potatoes, I am also browning my meat, and I'm doing this in batches and saving the grease as I go. We are looking for relatively even sized cuts on the potatoes. We're gonna set those aside until the water has boiled. Then we move to the onions. There's my little puppy Coda, who came in from his very exciting snow day to say hi. With the onions, you're gonna take off the tops and bottoms, take off the skins. I do have an option of 2 bonus recipes this week, either chicken bone broth or beef bone broth. Otherwise, those onion peels will be trash, but there is a way that we can have this be a zero waste meal. Here, I have taken the tops and bottoms off my onions and then that outer layer with the skin, and I've sliced them in half, so I'm getting that nice flat surface to make it safe to cut, and I'm doing a relatively even chop on those. So we've got a rough dice on our onions. Our potatoes have been boiling. Gonna go ahead and give those another stir, and my turkey and ground beef mixture is cooking. I am gonna let that cook a little bit longer than it kind of feels like it needs to. With the ground beef, I'm just cooking it until I can't see any more kick. When it's a turkey ground beef mixture, I'm gonna cook that down a little bit more than when I think it's done, just to make sure. I also am going heavier with the seasoning once I get to turkey than what I was doing with ground beef. Turkey is a super blank canvas, so we're able to do a little bit heavier on the salt and the pepper. A little hard to see through the steam, but you can see there's still plenty of red in this meat. So we are nowhere near done on this. This is my ground beef and turkey mixture. It also is letting off a lot of liquid. That's gonna be a mixture of grease and then like the poultry juices. So while we saved our grease earlier, and that is in this bowl right here, that was from just the ground beef, we are not going to save this liquid. We are also not going to pour it down the drain because it does have a lot of grease in it. We're just going to cook this down probably another 5 or 6 minutes so we get rid of that red plus some. And then we'll do the last round, which is going to be turkey on its own. I have gone ahead and poured off the cooking liquid from the ground beef and turkey mixture. I am going to go ahead and add half the Worcestershire to this mixture. This is going to be about a tablespoon. Tablespoon and a half. The Worcestershire is actually going to bring, another one of my dogs, sorry. It's going to bring a more of a depth of flavor to the beef. And by adding it into our turkey, we're pulling in a little bit more of that balance of flavor. Worcestershire does have some acidity to it, so that's why we want to add it to the turkey. Now that the liquid has been poured off, let that cook another 2 or 3 minutes, and then we'll pull that off into our last batch of turkey. Okay, so our ground beef and turkey mixture with that little bit of Worcestershire sauce has been cooking down. We're gonna go ahead and pull that off, add the last of the turkey in there. That will also get about a tablespoon and a half of Worcestershire sauce, salt and pepper. Again, you can go a little heavy on the salt and pepper when it's just the turkey. And we're gonna go ahead and add this cooked turkey and ground beef right into the same pot that I've been adding the ground beef to. And now we're on our last batch of meat. And we'll wash this protein cutting board. And wash my hands again. I am gonna let the turkey cook down and pour those juices off before I add the Worcestershire because I don't wanna pour out that flavor. So we'll cook this down, Get it to the point that it's completely cooked, pour the juice off, add the Worcestershire, cook another 2 or 3 minutes. Just tested my potatoes. The way I test the potatoes is just taking the spoon into the hot pot, pulling 1 or 2 of bigger pieces up and touching them. If they fall apart in your hands, you're good. These are falling apart when I touch them, but I'm getting a little resistant, so I'm gonna give it about another 2 minutes before I strain those out. So we'll go ahead and prep the mixer to be ready for when those potatoes are drained. So I have gone ahead and measured out 1 cup of sour cream and 1.5 cups of milk, and I'm just gonna set those aside. I ended up using a mix of whole milk and 2% because it's what I had. I also have these cute little half sticks of butter because, quite frankly, it's what was cheapest when I went to the store. Use whatever is gonna save you some money. These little half sticks are great too because they're gonna split up the butter in the bowl, making it a little easier to melt. That butter is straight in the bottom of the bowl. We're gonna pour the hot potatoes on top of it, let that melt a little, whip it in, and we'll start adding in the dairy as it's whipping. I have a mini mixer, and so this 5-pound bag of potatoes is literally all that would fit in my mixer. That is fine. That is why we use a mix of fresh potatoes and instant potatoes. I will explain a little bit more about that in a minute. For now, we're gonna let this sit on top of the butter, let that start to melt. And meanwhile, my turkey has been cooking away. And a little bit of pink on that last flip, so I'm gonna let it sit in the pan another minute or so before I drain off any excess liquid, add my Worcestershire, and let that cook for about 2 to 3 minutes. Drained off the excess liquid from my turkey and added the Worcestershire. It's cooked about another 2 minutes. I'm gonna go ahead and add it into this stock pot, which is where I have been keeping all of the ground meats as we brown them. There's nothing else in there other than the cooked meats, seasoned as we seasoned them while they were cooking. And I'm just gonna leave that set aside while I take care of my mashed potatoes, and then we'll come back to this. We're also going to use the same pan that we were browning the meats in to do our onions. So let's set this aside and get our onions started, since that is the first, since the onions need to cook down. Got my burner on a medium-high heat. I'm gonna go ahead and use some of the fat that we held back from the ground beef to cook my onions in. Again, turkey is very, very lean. And so the way you get the kids to not know that you subbed in some turkey is to use that residual fat rather than other oils to cook our other elements. So my pan is gonna fit about half the onion, so I will do this process twice. It's just got the ground beef fat in the bottom there. We're gonna go ahead and salt and pepper. And just let it cook down on a medium heat. As you can see, I'm definitely not measuring the salt and pepper. You know how to cook. Like, the recipe is suggestions. Cook to taste. So as I said, I have a mini mixer, which is perfect. Normally it is literally me and my dogs, and I don't bake. So a mini mixer is all I need. Thank you, Mom. That being said, it's not going to fit enough mashed potato for us to do shepherd's pie for 25. So we're warming some water that we're gonna use for the instant potatoes, and we're gonna pivot back to our mashed potato while that warms. Well, our potatoes have been sitting on the butter. That should be nice and melty. I'm gonna go ahead and add about 1/4 of the milk. And just put this on low to start getting those potatoes moving around. As they start to fall to the center, we can increase the speed. You could totally use a hand mixer for this. Heck, you can smash it out, get some of that aggression out, whatever works for you and whatever tools you have. Adding another third of my milk. And now I'm gonna start adding some of the sour cream because again, I have a mini mixer, kind of awkward, so I'm gonna spoon that in. Salt and pepper. And we'll go ahead and increase the speed on that. You do not want to over whip potatoes. That's where you get that super starchy. So this kind of medium high is as high as I'm going to go. I'm going to add the rest of my liquid. And turn it down because with that's a bit floppy. All right, and I'm gonna go ahead and cut this off for a second, pull it up, and just push any potatoes that are stuck to the sides down in. Now, if your mashed potatoes are looser than how you would bring them to the table, that's fine, because we're gonna add in instant potatoes. And so the richer, more luscious that these potatoes are, the better. There goes the rest of the sour cream. And again, these potatoes are probably not the consistency that I would serve as a side dish at Thanksgiving, but they don't need to be. That has been going on a medium mix for about 2 minutes. I'm adding some more pepper because as it blended in, the pepper just completely dissolved into that mixture. You want to be able to see a little bit of the granules in there. Our instant potatoes need a little bit of help. We learned this trick of the mashed potatoes and instant potatoes the hard way. In my actual kitchen, which hopefully we'll cook in next week, I only have one outlet, and so I literally have to move appliances depending what I'm using. I tried to do mashed potatoes, I tried to do shepherd's pie by myself one day for 60 people, and all real mashed potatoes. Never again. You get just as good of a result doing what we're doing now. But because the instant potatoes are gonna need a little help, that's why we want this to be nice and creamy and luscious. And we're also going to add in some grated cheese. Okay, so there's the base for our potatoes. Girlfriend did not get thick without loving her some mashed potatoes. Let's give this a taste. So good. Again, it's looser than I would normally do. You can definitely taste the dairy, but we're gonna add that in to our instant potatoes. So we'll go ahead and shake off what we can on there. And we're gonna leave this set aside and go back to our onions and our water for the instant potatoes. Trying very hard to keep the kitchen clean for you all, but quite frankly, if you're not making a mess cooking, you're not having fun. So at this point we have our mashed potatoes done, our meats are done, but they are only seasoned with salt, pepper, and Worcestershire. So that's the next thing that we're gonna do while we're waiting on these first batch of onions to cook. Then we'll have to cook our second batch of onions. At this point, my first batch of onions is done. You can see getting some nice browning on those. I am gonna go ahead and set these aside, put a little bit more beef fat in the bottom of this pan, and add my other bowl of raw onion. My water is boiling to do the instant potatoes, so we're gonna go ahead and do that now. This was another point where I thought I was filming, but I wasn't. I have 6 cups of instant potatoes and then a couple cups of water. I'm gonna do about another ½ cup of the hot liquid. Mix that in with my melted butter. You can see we're starting to loosen up a little bit. I do not want this super loose. I do not want this like our other mashed potatoes because we're gonna mix the two together. So this is a little bit thicker, super, super bland. Let's go ahead and season this. We are gonna go salt, pepper, and that Parmesan cheese. And I'm using a mixture of Parmesan and Romano. Good amount of that. Okay. Fold that in. And now you can see I'm getting stiff again. So I'm gonna go for another ½ cup of water. So we're about 7.5 to 8 cups of water to 6 cups of instant mashed potato. If you want this to be really decadent, you could obviously use milk, but we are budget cooking. Water is gonna work just fine because our other mashed potatoes are super decadent. Okay, so you can see I can move my spoon in this. Not super, super thick, not super, super watery. Now we're gonna add our other potatoes. And if you don't have a bowl big enough to mix these, go ahead and split the instant potato and the real potato and do 2 batches. I have poured about half of my actual potato in here. There's still some in this mixing bowl, only because I wanna fold it in and then I'll add some more. And if you're cooking in a troop, make sure you're keeping an eye on your onions and maybe even start sauteing those frozen veggies. I am working by myself today, and so I'm gonna wash my hands and check on my onions real quick. All right. So at this point we have our regular potatoes, our instant potatoes, and we have folded those together. The instant potatoes, it was 6 cups of the instant potato flakes to about 7.5, 8 cups of water. Again, we didn't let it get super liquidy. You can always add a little bit more milk if they start to tighten up, but because our real potatoes were kind of loose, that's why we wanted to leave them a little thicker. So you can see it's a nice spreadable consistency at this point. All it has is salt and pepper, and then milk, sour cream, and butter. We're gonna leave it like that for now. I am gonna add a little bit more seasoning at the end. But for right now, potatoes are done. My onions are looking great, so let's pivot back to those and then season up our meat. And then once our frozen vegetable are ready to go, we'll start assembling. My onions are looking great. They're getting nice and brown. They're a little bit greasy, which is perfect. So we want a little bit of that beef fat in there. And again, just salt and pepper. I'm going to add these with my other cooked onions and start doing the frozen vegetables. We have the big bag of mixed vegetables. This was about $6 at my local Walmart. I'm not actually gonna use all of this, but stays in the freezer, super easy, super economical. $6 for all this. Once again, I'm gonna pull out my little reserve of beef fat. I'm not using a ton, maybe a tablespoon, tablespoon and a half. Gonna grease that pan again. And then we're going to pour in some veggies straight from the freezer. I have used about half of that bag We'll start assembling, and then if we're like, nah, I really want some more veg, this takes all of 3 minutes. So we can always cook up a little bit more, fold that in. Even if individual people in your troop want to add some more veg to their casserole, go for it. Good old salt and pepper. And I'm sure at this point you're wondering, is she ever going to add anything other than salt and pepper? And yes, we're about there. So I am going to let that just kind of sit in the beef fat for about 3 minutes. I want the veggies to start absorbing that. And my next step is gonna circle back to this pot of hot water that we used for instant potatoes. I'm gonna add that and basically steam these veggies in the saute pan. Now while that's going, we're gonna season our meat. So the difficulties of filming alone, I thought that I was filming and I wasn't. So I'm gonna talk you through the first step and then we'll cut back to my live video. So this is my meat mixture. It was the ground beef and the turkey. That literally was just ground beef and turkey with salt and pepper. So what I did is I went ahead and added the Italian seasoning, some fresh minced garlic, and more of this grated cheese. Now, between the mashed potatoes and the meat, I'm using the entire can of cheese, 1 8-ounce can. I also used 1.5 cans of this pasta sauce. You can use any tomato product you want. Basically it came out to about 36 ounces of tomato sauce that was used in here. And you'll see I add up 2/3 of it. I taste the meat, season it a bit more before I add the rest of the tomato sauce because that taste does become a little bit more prevalent, a little stronger, and we want to taste the meat itself before we round out the tomato. So back to the live video. So we went ahead and tasted our meat mixture, and the meat is tasting good. I'm gonna add a little bit more pepper, a little bit more garlic. The reason I tasted it before I added this last bit of tomato sauce, which is another 1/2 can, if you're using that same spaghetti sauce, is because I want to taste the actual seasoning of the meat before the tomato flavor becomes a little bit more prevalent. And yes, it is 9 o'clock. Like you are cooking with friends, neighbors, by yourself on a snow day. You do you, girl. Or guy. Okay, pepper, a little bit more garlic. And we'll go ahead and give this a mix. There we go. So you can use just 1 can of the tomato sauce if you prefer your shepherd's pie a little dry. Personally, I don't. I want that kind of, not gravy, but that little bit of sauciness that carries and marries everything together, especially because our veggies and our onions are going to be dry when we add them in. Okay, give this another taste. So good. Can totally taste the cheese. Can totally taste the Italian seasoning, and that is going to carry this dish so nicely. So, we have our potatoes, our meat set aside, and I'm going to get back to the frozen veggies, and then we'll assemble everything. Because I have this giant stock pot, I went ahead and combined what we've made so far. So I have my onions, my cooked veggie, and then all my meat that we seasoned. And you can see I am meaty right now. So I'm actually gonna go ahead and add some more veggies. If you have family who are like not into the veggie game, cool, go with this route. That was about 40 ounces or half the bag of veg to the amount of meat that we used. I wanna stretch this, and I also wanna make sure that the elders I'm giving this meals to get their veggies. So I went ahead and add a little bit more of the beef tallow into my pan. Again, we're not using a ton every time. And I'm gonna add another round of veggies. And I went ahead and added the rest of the bag of veggies. So we'll end up using the whole 80-ounce bag of veggies to 8 pounds of meat. Really get that balance in there. And I am just gonna let these veggies sit on that beef fat for a good 3 to 4 minutes, start to heat up, and then I'll add 2 cups of water and let them simmer. I have just added my second round of veggies in here, and using the 8 pounds of meat and the 80-ounce bag of frozen veg, 3-pound bag of onions. I'm getting to a ratio I really like. I am gonna add a little bit more of the pasta sauce. Go ahead and do this in your individual casserole dishes so that you can make it saucier or not for your individual families. It is looking fantastic. I kind of wish I wasn't gonna give it all away. Now I'm gonna go ahead and assemble into my pans. I am going to make 4 foil pans. There's one slightly out of view here. And that's because I'm bringing these to a local senior center. Absolutely, there's plenty of food here to split for 5. So let me go ahead, I'm gonna evenly split my meat and vegetable mixture, and then I'm gonna pull my potatoes in. Good golly, Miss Molly, too heavy. Pardon the pink cheeks, I was outside in the snow. Oh, my veggies are cooking. Woo. Like I said, plenty of food here. These are gonna be nice, full dishes because I'm doing 4 instead of 5. Ideally, you want each one of these trays, you want each one of these trays half to 3/4 of the way full with your meat and veggie mix. And how good does that look? Now, put my second one aside, fill up these 2, and we'll get to the potatoes. These are a little fuller on the meat than I would normally do. Again, I'm doing 4 portions out of this instead of 5. But they look fantastic, and I'm gonna go ahead and add my mashed potatoes. So I'm gonna start out by just doing 2 big scoops on each of my casseroles. I don't know why this makes me think of like a, maybe because I was watching Wonka last night, it makes me think of like a washerwoman. So pink. It is really cold here in Western North Carolina right now. It actually